Hello and welcome to the Engerati studio at Charge 2016. We're now joined by Bente Engesland, Senior Vice President of Corporate Communication at Statkraft. Bente, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. It's such an inspiration to be at this conference in Reykjavik.
So we haven't had anyone with communications and in particular media background at the studio. So would you mind telling us a bit about, where you've come from in your journey into the utility sector?
Well, for most of my professional career, I've been working in the media industry in Norway. So I was based in the Norwegian broadcasting company, NRK, and also one of the main newspapers. And I left the media industry at a time where there was a great disruption and change in the media industry, affected by digitalization, technological revolutions that were coming into the industry. And what we can see now in the energy sector is actually some of the same things happening. Digital technology also changes the energy industry. So I've had a very interesting journey.
In terms of the topic of disruption and digitization, are you able to draw some comparisons or maybe elaborate on some of those comparisons between, what happened in the media industry back then and what you're seeing in the utility sector right now?
Yeah, you see, there is a parallel. Media were in many ways taken by surprise. They acted a bit late and too little when after the World Wide Web really, revolutionized everything of communication. And it affected revenues. It affected, the way you produce media as well. But the newspapers and also TV stations, they, hung on to their old business models. They were not appreciating this change that was coming until it was a bit too late. So many media companies actually went down. And you can see some of this happening in the energy industry as well. The old utilities are really struggling these days. You see big companies, big energy companies losing revenues, having great, fallbacks in their positions. And they need to change and they need to adapt to this new world. And it's just a fundamental shift.
Okay. Well, staying on that topic of, the change that's coming and also staying financially relevant as well. In fact, one of the trending themes we had on Twitter during your presentation at the event was a quote you had made around, largely saying that whatever you do next really doesn't matter unless it's actually financially viable. And how big a deal is that in terms of the context of branding, in terms of thinking about renewables and these various disruptions?
It's a great deal. And I believe that communication needs to work very close to business. It is about business. It's about, acknowledging the importance of value creation, revenues, showing your numbers. If you don't do that, you will not create trust in your brand. So for that matter, I sort of belong to the more conservative part of this communication industry. And I work very closely with our financial teams, for example. And I believe that in the long term, this is what will pay off. And we have a very sober strategy in communication in Statkraft, but it has paid off and it has increased our reputation in the public opinion as well. And I think the reason for that is that people trust what we deliver.
Okay, well, let's touch on more personal issues or not personal issues, issues that are closer to heart. Better way of saying that, right? And climate change. This is something that you're particularly keen on getting into also at a business level. Would you mind talking about, walking us through the impact of climate change and then maybe looping that back into the brand image, brand power debate?
First of all, climate change is, one of the really biggest challenges of our time. So it's interesting and necessary to work on. And working in a renewable company, this is also at the heart, at the core of our business, so it connects very easily. But a company like ours is not like an activist. We're not a research institute. What we do is we collaborate with research institutes within science and climate. We work with environmental organizations as well. But our purpose is to create business. And the good thing is that green is good these days. It's business. And I think that it's very important to be honest about that. So what I believe is that we will be able to create sustainable economy, sustainable businesses, but also being profitable.
It's very interesting how you're you almost reiterate that sort of clarification on what plane you're working on. You know, it's sustainable is great. You know, climate change is good, but as a business, you know, you've also got to keep an eye on the ball here. If you lose that, then you don't deliver either, right?
Yeah, and I think that when we enter countries like Turkey, India, Brazil, for example, some of the countries that we operate in, we need to contribute to that society as well. So we would not be good for anyone if we are not making a profitable business. So in a way that also goes hand in hand. And I think that it's important to be, in order to be a respected company, is that you make actual value. So if you will ensure that your business is sustainable, and you also need to have a long-term perspective. So it might take a longer time than it otherwise would, but it will give you, great return at a later stage.
Okay. Well, let me sort of ask you about specifics here. And I do appreciate the sort of top-level strategic point of view around communications. From a making it happen perspective, you've previously worked in media, which in my perspective is probably at the leading edge of communications, right? What are some of the things that really...
It's instant.
Exactly, right? What are some of the things that really excite you? Maybe some technology, some opportunities for the utility sector looking to really get to grips with communication, again, in lieu of branding.
Well, first of all, I think that I've tried to use some of my earned competencies from the media industry also in the company. So the easy part of that is making use of platforms like a TV studio, like using communication channels, like making venues, conferences, arenas for communication. So that's a part of it, but that's more like the techniques. The other story, which is more challenging, is how to really reach out to people these days, how to connect and collaborate. So I also try sometimes to think as an editor, how do you really reach out to people? And we want to meet up more with younger students, academians, the future of our company, people you want to recruit. So then we try to design some of the communication so it's attractive for them, which may be different than when you address your key stakeholders in the government. We are 100% state-owned. So then you differentiate because you cannot talk to the government the same way. So it's sort of being pretty advanced, pretty refined in the methods of working. But it's all about making sure that people can trust the brand. So you have to tell the same story, but you differentiate the way you work.
Okay, I'm going to end on a final piece here around renewables and sort of tying in, also some of those key points, touch points you've mentioned. So, Statkraft is claimed to be a strong renewable energy company. So perhaps, it may be seen that it might be easier for you than others to embrace, some of the climate change issues. So what are your ambitions and what's sort of next on the horizon for you going forward? Well,
we have a very good platform since we are renewable and since more and more people realize that this is the way to go. We are in a green transition. It's taking time, but it will happen. For us, this is, of course, a good platform. But then again, what we see in all of the energy industry is so many changes happening so rapidly that no one really could imagine. And this also makes it harder for us. The competition is tougher. There are new companies entering into this competition. So you have to be really strong on your business case. So it's not like being in a green industry is easy. So we also have to fight for our values.
Okay, well, I think that's a brilliant place to bring this interview to a close. So thank you so much, Bente. And thank you as well for listening into this interview. If you'd like to find out more about the inner workings of communications and brand engagement, brand power, please check out our other interviews as well at Charge 2016 and also the digital magazine, which will be made available shortly. Thank you very much.